Just a few housekeeping.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Oliver, actually. Just one housekeeping note. You all know, please ask your question with Slido and not in the chat. I'm very honored, and I'll stop the screen now. Very honored today to have with us several speakers that some of them you already met, and we will discuss on probably the most important topic of this event. How can project manager contribute to public good? The fact that we're here today is already an answer. But we have with us Tony Appleby, a well-known face. We have all seen him as a chair of PMI board of director. He led us through the COVID pandemic. Lucila Dotto, I'm pretty sure most of you know her. She's the European chapter engagement manager at PMI. She's also a psychologist and brings with her gentle and insightful way to project management. Shanek, am I saying your name right?
Very close. Thank you, Przemek.
Shanek. Thank you. I won't try the last name. I apologize. Business and technology transformation expert, international speaker. He loves playing board games and he likes to travel to the end of the world. Antarctica, I believe, is the farthest you have gone so far. Deanna Landers, a rather well-known face also. She's a past chair of PMI board of director, but she's also the founder and president of Project Managers Without Borders. Was mission is to make a positive difference in the world through project management. Olivier, Lazar, Vice President for and Social Impact at PMI and Chief Operation Officer at PMI EF. Also an international speaker and a LIMSI alumni fellow, just like me. Oliver Lehmann, you have been seeing him all day today, trainer in project management, past president of the South German chapter and long time volunteer and still volunteering at PMI. Last but not least, certainly, Thomas. Very nice to see you again, Thomas. A PMI fellow, many times in the board of director of PMI, also volunteer, and we share a common interest in ethics, and now continues to contribute to our community as a speaker. I will start with the theme of the day with a question for all of you. How can project managers contribute to the public good? Tony, would you like to start?
Oh, thank you, Giusi, and it's great to be here, with such a distinguished crowd. Deanna, I think you're on the water somewhere. It's impressive that you're able to join us as you're gallivanting on your boat. And it's great to see everybody. It really, really is. So, how can project managers contribute to public good? So, in everyday speak, we use the term ESG, environment, social governance, but it's kind of hard to break that down mentally into something that can be actionable, especially as project managers. And I would suggest that as project leaders, we have the opportunity to look at how our projects can support sustainable practices, for example, the opportunity to define how materials are sourced from third-party vendors, for example. We can work with our procurement departments in our various organizations and ask them to set certain criteria that ensure that There's ethical, practices, no sweat equity labor being put into place, and child labor, comes to mind. We see that in a number of countries as they produce products, that we consume around the world, and helping to stamp that out by ensuring that we partner with companies that have social good programs in place and that they report out on those and really adhere to the concepts. It helps move the needle bit by bit, so that our world is a better place.
Thank you so much, Tony. Lucila, would you like to continue?
Yes, I think like Tony just referenced, like the commitment with ESG that is becoming more and more important these days, because it's a way of optimizing resources. And if we have to think about like the behaviors and the attitudes that we need to experience towards ESG, everything starts with commitment to building ESG into our governance of projects and giving that importance. So I would say that commitment is key, but also like the possibility to assess the current state of the project. So how honest are we being about our baseline in order to shape that commitment? And I think one of the key behaviors that we need to address is to be courageous in order to make the right choices, because in the end, like that strategy and that commitment to being sustainable and to be making a positive impact, it's going to be like translated into the daily choices that we make as project management. For example, if we have these requirements of being really cost efficient and to take the lowest cost requirements, we can also embed an ESG exception in those. So those ultimately choices that we make in how we handle the project is what will make the project sustainable. Thank you, Giusi.
Thank you, Lucila. Przemek?
Hi, thank you. So excellent points from Tony and Lucila. So I was thinking I'll share one concept here. My take is, as project managers, should be excellent in building support network with the management, with the community, with the environment. So basically building ecosystems, right? And I think there was actually some research by Barbara Eddington about that, where they checked number of things that are important for the project managers. And one of those was this building the networks, right? Or networking support. And now, my take here is that if project managers are able to build a positive reinforcements around the ecosystem that they work with, so not only the company or the organization they work with, right, but the partners, the suppliers, the vendors, the clients, and getting them on board with the specific mission, why those things are being done or why those things are happening, then ultimately the influence that they have, right, and the impact of the positive projects or initiatives that is happening will be much wider, right? So I'm looking at some examples, right? In the corporate world, I think it's fairly easy, right? If you have a vision and if you do have this positive impact, you can get others on board because they want to do it in par with you. In the PMI, though, where we are working on so many different positive projects for good, right? I'm thinking about building a positive value chain where you're thinking not only about running a specific positive project, but actually embedding into some value chain of other partners within your ecosystem. So one of the examples could be in the PMI Gdańsk, there was this project, social for good project, where team wanted to organize camps that were teaching English as a foreign language to kids from foster homes and from tough neighborhoods. And now they did run this in the number of different iterations, this project. But what actually happened is they built the ecosystem around that of the organizations, partners, volunteers that wanted to help completely outside of the PMI, right? That wanted to participate in this positive impact mission, right? And now the things that joined in this chain were, for example, the people that you want to get sponsors for such events. It's not always easy, right? And what happened is that they organized a New Trends in Project Management conference, right? That took speakers and presenters that did not get any fee for presenting on this conference, right? But actually donated their time so they could become sponsors for this camp for those underprivileged kids, right? And actually that built a chain of support for this particular mission, right? And everything under the wider umbrella of supporting or giving back to the community and supporting the project management for the kids here as such. So this is a small example where it can help, and project managers and the project management community can help in the volunteering setup. The same principle can be applied for the positive value chain and ecosystems all around.
No.
So I think that I really agree with everybody who's been speaking so far. Recognizing the value of our project management skills, I think, is really key, and sharing those with those who need them the most. So really volunteering the services that we have as project managers can make a huge difference in areas of efficiency and effectiveness for any NGO or humanitarian organization. The speaker who was before this panel mentioned that there are lots of NGOs, lots of different types of NGOs. And I'd like to point out that in these humanitarian organizations, those NGOs, there's a huge range of maturity. And so we can help somebody like, as an example, Habitat for Humanity, if you can get in and talk about how we can improve their processes. They have project management. They know about project management. They've operationalized it. So they're building a house, building a house, building a house. So if you can get in there, great. But I would say that more likely we're able to make more of a difference with our project management skills from a volunteering perspective if we are helping those that are less mature from a project management perspective. They really need our help. So they can benefit from all of our skills, tools, techniques, observations, all of the things that everybody's been speaking about so far for your day job. When you're really good at it, share those things and apply those really well. So I would say, in short, volunteering our experience to humanitarian organizations or others that are serving the public good and helping them have more impact through project management.
Thank you so much, Deanna. And we have Olivier.
Yeah, definitely. Deanna knows something about using project management for the better good and supporting relief efforts. I think it goes way beyond that. We were talking about ESG, environmental, social governance aspects of sustainability and positive impact. It's also about CSR, corporate social responsibility. Now, an organization today, whatever organization, whatever market, whatever they're doing, has to realize that they don't have only to deliver projects on time, on scope, on budget. They also have to deliver a project which outcome makes a positive contribution on their environment. And I say environment at large. So all of your stakeholders. I mean, if the outcome of your project doesn't make any difference, if the outcome of your project is not a trigger for positive change, you're just wasting your time and your resources. And now, with everything we have integrated within a framework of project management, which starts from business analysis, which defines what is the value from the perception of our stakeholders, with project management itself, what you can find in the PMBOK guide, which tells you how to go from the idea into a concrete and tangible outcome, to program management, which tells you how to integrate that into the organization to allow the organization to generate the expected benefits. And finally, portfolio management, which embeds these benefits into the organizational strategy. All of that is aimed at generating sustainable, positive outcomes, impacting your environment, impacting society at large. If you if you don't do your projects in order to make a positive difference, you're wasting your time and your energy. And this is what creates attractiveness. This is what creates competitive advantage. This is what creates trust. Now, currency between an organization and its clients is not only money, it's trust. I've seen a study published by an institute named the Lehmann Institute a few years ago. 39% of customers of a particular organization buying a particular kind of product are keen to pay twice as much for the same product if it comes from an organization that trust. I mean, you pay your pack of yogurts, I don't know, €5, $5. If it comes from an organization you trust, you are keen to pay $10 for it. Isn't that amazing? How much of more benefit, how much of more sustainable positive impact you can generate with this twice as much investment from your customers. And what creates that trust, which triggers that, how your organization is perceived as having a positive impact on society, not just making profit, not just delivering nice and workable products, but really products, services, outcomes, benefits that have a positive impact on society. And this is what project management is about.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Oliver.
I, first of all, can only agree to what has been said so far, and I'd like to pick up this topic with trust. I think that's a core element here, because this is the business case behind being interested, being active for the good of the people. The reason is that these people may be our customers, they may be our competitors sometimes, they may be our contractors, they may be our workers, and whatever that is, we interact with them, they are our stakeholders, and trust is a very, very important thing. I learned in project management that trust is the most important booster for project performance that there is in the world. As soon as you have parties together that trust each other, then things go much, much quicker, go much, much easier, go much, much smoother. You need less bureaucracy, and you have to be not so extremely careful with the others, because you know they trust you and you can trust them. The difficulty with trust is, of course, if you trust the wrong people, they will just rip you off. So there was a statement some time ago: if you want to be trusted, be trustworthy. So I think number one is here to give in your daily business and in your projects, to give evidence again and again and again that you are trustworthy. And it has to do with two things. One thing is the products that we develop, the services that we develop, the things that are the deliverables of our projects. But I think the other important question is, how do we achieve this? What is happening on the process that leads to a result? Project management is not product management. Product management is you're just interested in the product. But in project management, we are also interested in the way how we achieve such a product. And I think we have to look at both sides and ask ourselves, what are the things that we can do better for ourselves, for the people we care for, and for the rest of the world, of course.
Thank you so much, Olivier. We get to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Giusi. And well, I'm the last one in this crowd. So I want to focus a little bit, on me, on you, on the individual, how to make things really ethical, how to make things really good for humanity, for the globe, for everybody. And it starts and ends with our decisions. And Lucila took it right. We have to become courageous to make the right decisions. But what is the right decision? What is good, what is bad? Everybody makes this judgment by himself. And Aristotle, this famous Greek philosopher 3,000 years ago. So he said, it's there are three kinds of knowledge. You know, the one is that we know something. You know, we know the what about the product, and then we know how to do things, but then we know why we should do things, and this is called phronesis. He called this phronesis, and when we develop this kind of phronesis, we are becoming more secure in our judgments, and we understand what is good, and we develop the world into a good place. And phronesis today translates into wisdom. So if we develop our wisdom, and I talked about wisdom in my speech some hours before, you know, then we will really not only improve ourselves and be good to ourselves, but we will be good to the others. As an example, you know, Deanna talked about that we have the ability and the knowledge to teach NGOs how to be more effective in what they are doing. And Giusi showed us how ineffective NGOs have been in the past in Turkey in handling the aftermath of the earthquakes. So if they would be more effective, so there would be more good in the world, and we can teach this. And I had the opportunity as a board member in 2019 to visit a chapter in Curitiba, Brazil. And actually they had a whole afternoon on a Sunday inviting about 10 NGOs and their leaders, and they 10 tables, and there were chapter volunteers talking to these 10 NGOs, and they had a big sheet of a project canvas in front of them. And they took the whole afternoon to fill in these project canvases together with these NGO guys, you know, and they went out of this afternoon and said, wow, we learned something. Not about, you know, project management, you learn something about our task and how we can make our NGO more effective and more serving our constituency, and that's what they did. So I was really amazed by that task by the chapter, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and it was quite hot down there, but it was nevertheless a good outcome. So let me close with that. You know, how do we improve ourselves to become better in judgments and to become a more ethical person? And I can recommend to you, there is a Harvard Business Review article from 2020, so just 3 years ago, in January 2020, and it's called Building an Ethical Career. And actually it tells you in 3 simple steps how you can develop yourself into a more ethical person, you know, and the 3 steps are prepare yourself to be ethical, you know, know yourself, what your values are, know yourself, what your judgments are today, and then prepare yourself for situations where you come in ethical dilemmas, where you have to take a courageous decision, you know. And if you prepare yourself, you know, you ask yourself questions like, what if that and that happens, you know, how will I decide? And this helps you to develop yourself. And then after you took these decisions, and to be honest, you know, we are taking about 3,500 decisions every day, you know, which food do we get out of bed, you know, how do we brush our teeth, and what is for breakfast, and so on, 3,500. And most of them, you know, we are not aware of what we are doing. But from these, you know, some are ethical, questionable. And if you are more conscious, you know, when such a decision is in front of you, if you prepare yourself every day, you know, every day, prepare yourself, then you are more conscious in your daily decision making. And if you then, you know, after these decisions have been taken and you wondered if I took the right decision, you know, do the debrief. Do the debrief with people you talked about, do the debrief with thinking about yourself, and learn. And this is a cycle. Be aware of, take decisions, and do a debrief. In that article, I really can recommend it. And, you know, and again, as I started to talk, you know, it's about improving ourselves first.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you all. My takeaway from listening to you is that from organization to individual is always the way we achieve the result, the way we create the value, the way we make the decision, the way we share our decision, even the problems, the solutions, that will make the difference, that will create the trust, the trustworthiness, very significant aspect, since trust is creates such a strong bonds, but is also the most fragile of the elements of any bonds, can be ruined in just a few seconds, as you all know. We will now go on with some questions from your specific area. I just want to remind all the participants that you can, if you wish, you can ask your question through Slido. And we will have some session in which we'll go through them. Tony, I'll start again with you. And I know that you travel all over the world just talking about project management and the future of our profession, which is a topic that we all care about. And of course, that's what I'm going to ask you about.
So you're asking what's top of mind for the future of our profession, sort of thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's a very popular presentation that I do give, and I do spend an hour on that, and I could do 10 hours on it. But the question that I get asked the most about is the digital disruption factor, and trying to tie that into social good, maybe a stretch, but I'll do my best. So it's, how will artificial intelligence change, the future of how I, as a project manager, as a project leader, do my work? Is it going to take over my job? And the short answer is no, it's not going to take over your job. The longer answer is, how is it going to change your job? So we have now, chatbots and mechanisms, that we interplay with, and we have, for many, many years. I can chat with a virtual assistant that can help me with my banking, or buy my airline tickets, that sort of thing. But those also exist in the project management field now. I've had the opportunity to interact with a prototype. It was actually a couple of years ago, where I would get a notification on my phone. It would say that Jane, she's one of my quality assurance people, is planning to, take 4 weeks off, next month, because her son's wife is having a baby and she wants to be there. It's her first grandchild. Here are the options, for substitutes for Jane to work on your project team. Which one would you like, or would you like to do something else? And the something else is kind of the important part for me, because Jane is really attached to the project. So she would rather have, some additional work up front and some additional work on the other side, rather than have somebody else play in her space. So for team continuity, I can address that. And the machine, the mechanism, the AI will learn, how I interact, and will present better options for me. We'll talk about the impacts, but more complex decisions will take a great amount of data in order to parse into the AI. And when I say a great amount of data, I mean voluminous, terabytes of data, and that data needs to be constructed in such a way that it's meaningful to the project leader and to the project team themselves. And that generally can't be found within a single organization. So finding a consortium, of people who are working on the same types of projects, not just building bridges, but building, iron tensile bridges, or concrete bridges, is different than, and they have to share the data amongst their competitors in order to get the power of that. Now, that may be advantageous to them in the aggregate, but for project managers, can we create a consortium where we're starting to gather that sort of information? Maybe yes, and I suspect likely in the future we'll see that happening. But we're going to see more data scientists, data analysts on our teams, on our project teams, as a result of big data being available and having AI to help sort that. We'll need people who have an understanding of machine learning, and we as project leaders need to have some knowledge, of what that is, so that we can direct it appropriately. We can also direct it to look at, how best to employ, mechanisms like sustainability, ESG, how to build trust, as has been mentioned. So that's top of mind for me in that particular regard. And I can go on for hours, so I'm just going to stop there. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Tony. I'm going to go back to the humans, at least for a while, then we might touch upon AI again with Lucila. Lucila, the trend on in business is all the more and more toward sustainability, ethical, considerable way to work. And what I'm curious about, tapping into your specific field, behavioral perspective of how ESG, what it means for PMO, in particularly for organizations that really are the foundation for project managers.
Thank you, Giusi, for the question. And I think in the previous round, Olivier mentioned like the importance that organizations are giving to ESG and how customers are valuing these principles. And I think this trend is here to stay and to increase. So if for organizations like ESG is important, like it will be becoming more and more important. And we have the role and the power to influence from a project management perspective and to avoid that silo mentality. I'm going to focus on the particular social aspect of like the ESG components. And from a project management perspective, and we recently touched base on artificial intelligence, and I can see some comments in the chat. Obviously, artificial intelligence is here to stay and it's becoming more and more important. However, I tend to think, and I'm passionate about the emotional intelligence, because it's the only thing that at least machines for now cannot replace. And if we go back through, for example, the project management annual survey, like 9 over 10 project managers said that our power skills, the key success factors, because we manage projects, but we lead people. And that aspect of being able to communicate and engage the mind and the heart of the people we work with, it's crucial for the success of our project. Also, that element of strategic thinking, and we build our strategies if we engage different voices, if we promote teams that are diverse from a gender perspective, from a culture perspective, from an intergenerational perspective, and also from a cognitive perspective. So that element of building strategies through innovation and through diversity are super key and super important to also build sustainable projects. And I think we mentioned in the previous round the importance of building ecosystems, and like Project Management Institute and this great community is an example of the power of ecosystems. We're here today, it's late for many people on a Friday evening, and we are here discussing and sharing opinions and supporting our colleagues in times of needs. So that element of building ecosystems, of promoting diversity, of building together, it's super important for the success of projects, but also to ultimately make a positive impact in organizations, in society in general. So I mentioned in the previous round that element of being courageous, and the word courageous, it's coming from the Latin word of cor, that it's like heart. So there is an element of connection between courage and emotions and our heart. And being courageous is being able to leave our armor behind and to connect from a human perspective. And if we connect from a human perspective and we bring that courage, our heart, who we are, our vulnerability to our projects, we ultimately will be able to deliver better projects because we are including our whole self. We are human beings, not human doings. So the ultimately aspect of being 360 and to be bringing who we are to projects will help us to achieve better projects and to have a positive impact in society. So I want to close and to bring like the spot to another of my colleagues with one question to self-reflect. It's that are our choices, our daily choices, the choices we make when we connect with others, when we have to work, when we have to write an email or to give kind of like a suggestions, are our choices as courageous as our intentions? So it's a reflection for us to, as we were saying, as Thomas was saying, that start changing one minor attitude of kindness at a time. Like, because the minor things are ultimately like the repetition of the small things that create positive change in the project, in the business, in society, and in the world. Thank you, Giusi.
Thank you, Lucila. Przemek, I know that you often speak and write about leadership. So I'm going to ask you if you have anything to add to Lucila insight. I guess you do.
Sure. Thank you. So I totally agree with all the elements of looking inside yourself and then building the right team within your organization with all the mix of skills, values, and approaches that contribute to positive realization of the projects and to getting some good out of that. Now, I was thinking about this element of the PMO that was within the question, right? So how does it impact the PMO or nowadays PMO? And if we assume, and that depends organization by organization, right? But if we assume that PMOs currently named in very different ways, strategy management office, project program management office, portfolio management office, they fall into what Pierre, I think, named value management, right? And right now we're basically all in the business of delivering value. And that's, by the way, it was always the case. It's a naming convention, right? But value delivery office or value management office. So then within that organization, within the PMO with such a mission, there are usually two elements, right? So one is the execution or delivery of the strategy, and the second part is the governance within the organization, right? And both of those elements fall under the umbrella of the culture within the organization, right? So we all know those elements, and Lucila was showing us the slide today as well, right? Culture is strategy for breakfast, and so on. But that's really the case, right? So Lucila was mentioning, so how do we make those choices, right? Do we make the right choices, right? They need to be plugged into something, right? Within ourselves and within our organization, right? And ideally, the values that we do have as personal employees or the project managers that are running different projects, right, are aligned with the values of the organization. So that comes to understanding, okay, what does our organization stand for, right? What are the things that we are willing to fight for or positively change in the world? And what kind of things build trust, as Olivier mentioned, right? So those values that we plug in are super important for us and for the team that we're building, right? And with that, we can answer ourselves this question, okay, are we making the right thing? Are we making the right decision? Are we sending this email in the right way? And that brings us to few interesting decisions that we quite often, especially in the service organizations, need to make, right? Is this project the project that we should be doing? Maybe we should resign from this client. So not the other way around. Maybe it's not the client that should choose us or not, right? But maybe we should not take on this client. Maybe we should resign because of different reasons, right? Be it ethical or symptomatic to some specific cultural differences, right? But those are the things that are easier to manage within the organization, where the clarity of the values and the alignment of the employees' values and the organization values is clear. And going to the sustainability and thinking about linking that to the strategy and how PMO can help with the governance and with strategy execution. So if we take one of the approaches with the OKRs, right, objectives and key results within the organizations that we would be setting. So you can think about, I'll just put a random example, right? So we want to increase the number of sales from X to Y, right, within the specific period of time, right? But if we're saying, okay, there are specific values and sustainability is important for us, right? Then maybe then number of organizations will say, and it should be done in a sustainable way, right? So what we're saying is we will have a matrix setup of goals within the organization, we will have some numbers and goals that we want to achieve, right? And at the same time, there will be a behind story for us to answer ourselves all the time. Okay, we want to achieve it, but in the specific way. And of course, innovation can fall into there, sustainability can fall into those fields, and few other things there as well. And one of the roles of the PMO would be to capture those elements, right? To make sure that we do not forget. And project managers in the day-to-day life, it may be very hard for fast-running, fast-growing organizations, a lot of things happening for project managers, executives, and so on, right? Just making sure that we constantly ask ourselves those questions. And if something falls between the cracks, then that gets picked up by the PMO, and that is covered by the value delivery, right? So within those elements, right, I think focusing on the value delivery, having this background elements of what we want to achieve and whether our goals are there, taking or not taking specific projects and evaluating them against our principles, right? That's something that the proactive PMO or value delivery office could be helping as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Deanna, I'm just thinking of all the question, the decision, the moments, the skills, the competencies that are coming up from the people that spoke before you. And I'm also thinking of what Gamse has shown, how the NGOs are having some problems with dealing with projects and obviously with project management. So I'm asking you, what are the concrete ways in which project managers can help NGOs make a difference?
Yeah, I think, well, going back to what Thomas said, being our best selves makes a world of difference. So assuming if somebody works for an NGO, then being our best selves, knowing what's happening in the profession, being really good at what it is that we do, whatever that is in the project management space, is how to make a big difference, a concrete difference. But I'll assume most people don't work for an NGO. And I would say that first, get connected with an NGO to help, to really help. So there are so many NGOs out there, and you know them, they're in your backyard, you're familiar with the causes that they're helping. And so it could be a religious organization or a charity, anything that you're interested in, education or food service, whatever it is. And they're usually really happy to accept support, especially pro bono from professionals, which project managers are. For many nonprofits, they already have volunteers that are fulfilling all sorts of roles that they can't staff, they can't afford it. Funding is often an issue with not-for-profits and NGOs. And these NGOs need to be made aware that project managers can volunteer as well. They can fill a lot of those roles. In fact, they might be able to fill them even better because of all of the skills that they have. It might not have the title, but all of those skills are really, really valuable. So depending on the relationship that you have with the organization, you might have an opportunity to assess their needs. You might see that they don't think about risk enough, or whatever it is. If you look at the situation from a big picture perspective, resource management is one of the most valuable areas where project management skills can make a difference in an NGO. And when you think about it, it's because so many nonprofits, NGOs are lacking in those areas, from funding perspective, time, office supplies, materials to build bridges, whatever it is that's essential, whatever resources they have that they're working with, that's a space where it's measurable. We can make a huge difference with our skills, improving the efficiency that they have in dealing with their resources. Time is money. When you think about the efficiency of their staff, that can translate into more impact. Achieving their mission sooner, less funding's required for the same result, that sort of thing. We can improve the efficiency of the organization as a whole, or just for projects where the value specifically is being delivered. So I think the specific examples depend on the project management maturity of each individual organization, but a project manager could implement a schedule, for instance, at the lower levels of maturity, schedules. They may not even have schedules. They might just get things done as they can. Maybe communication cadence with action items, or as mentioned earlier, a risk log or something like that. Doing this work or even teaching how to do these things really makes it so that they can improve and their impact can be sustainable. And if we improve the impact that these organizations are making, then we're responsible, partially anyway, for the huge impact that they would have in the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But the impact, I'm going to start from there. And Olivier, based on your experience in general, but also with PMIEF, what could you add to what Deanna just said?
So to piggyback on what Deanna was saying, and what we're doing at PMIEF is actually to bring these skills, these competences to rising leaders, to incoming generations, kids, teenagers, to bring them this project management competency, not only to teach them actually how to manage a project. That's actually not what we want to do. What we want to do is to go back to the roots of what project management is. If you look at the talent triangle, PMI defining the talent triangle that project management is a combination of 3 dimensions. One is what we call now the ways of working, which was named technical skills. Another dimension is power skills, including leadership. And the 3rd dimension is business acumen or strategic awareness. Coming back to the very basic of it, what is it about? It's about, 1, knowing how to get things done, how to organize your work, how to structure your work. Secondly, how to work with others, how to work with your stakeholders, how to work with your sponsors, how to work with your clients, how to work with your recipients when you're leading a crisis relief effort. How to interact and work with others. And the final 3rd dimension is about understanding why you're doing things. What is the purpose behind? What is the value and the benefit to be generated from that? And this kind of skills are actually applicable to anything. PMI has spent 50+ years in trying to convince the world that project management is a profession. We have a problem. We did it. Yeah, champagne. We did it. So now what? Now what? Let's try to convince the world that project management is much more and beyond of a profession. It's actually a very important core skill for life, as we say at PMIEF, that is applicable to any type of endeavor initiative you can trigger, you can launch in any type of industry profession which you're exerting, in order to bring efficiency, value, and sustainability of that value over time for your stakeholders, for your organization. And so what we do with this youth is trying to embed the skill set for life in their curriculum in order to make them being future effective change makers and change leaders who will have a more sustainable and a deeper, a more positive impact on society. Doing better things in a better way, more efficiently, more effectively, and with a deeper impact. This is what we're trying to do here. So this is why also project management is so important as a skill. This is why I personally choose a career path within project management, because this is basically what really allows you to transform the world. So what are we going to do tomorrow? Same things as every night, Pinky, trying to transform the world in a better place.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Oliver, project management is a profession. And I know that in the recent years, you have shifted from internal project to project business? What's the difference? Tell us something about it.
Yeah, it's a bit of criticism, first of all, with PMI. PMI is very much focusing on internal projects, and the world around internal projects is more or less, yeah, I would say ignored. Sorry, Olivier, you were just a very good example. You talked about business acumen as one of the sides of the talent triangle. You used your fingers for that, yeah. And then you said it's about strategic outreach or something in this direction. No, of course it's not. It's about companies that are contractors and other companies that are customers. And now the project is not only just some kind of activity inside the organization to help the business, to improve the business. Now the project now is the business in this moment. We have one or more, sometimes lots of contractors working for the customer and doing the project for them and for the contractors. This is a profit center. This project is a profit center, no more a cost center. Internal projects are cost centers. This is where we begin. And now the problem is, this is not just a strange idea of a trainer. This is just happening at the moment. What we see is we can observe it, we can measure it. We see that projects that would have been internal projects in the past are more and more now cross-corporate projects. You have more than one organization involved in these projects in form of customers, contractors, subcontractors, and so on. If you think of mega projects that maybe hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 organizations involved to do this project together. And this leads to a lot of complexity. And one of these pieces of complexity is the question of bringing good to the people. First of all, it's getting more difficult because the new level of complexity we have is business interests. We have different organizations. They should work together, but they have often competing, often clashing business interests, but have to do the project together. And then in addition to having a successful project, they should consider things like ESG and the environment in general and people and so on. And at one point in time, people may get overwhelmed by that. So there is some negative relationship. There's also a positive relationship there at the same time. One of my favorite examples, what project business can do, what internal projects not can do, was COVID vaccines. The first 2 vaccines that there were on the marketplace were both developed in cooperations of companies. The first one was an American customer. This was Pfizer, and it was a German contractor, a company called BioNTech. And together they developed this vaccine, which one organization alone would not have been able to do, because this task is far too complex with all the studies that they have to make and with the basic research and so many, many things. But together they were successful. And I have some background information. It was not just 2 companies. There were, I think, I hear something, there were something about 70 other organizations involved in that. A perfect example what project business can do. This was really a race. Who will be the first on the market with this product? It's business interest to be the first, but of course it's also a matter of humanitarian thinking, because then you can help most. The earlier you are on the marketplace, the more people you can help with this vaccine. And so this is what they did. And acting together as organizations, not one organization alone, in cooperation and in a business together, they could achieve things that one organization alone could not achieve. It's a complex topic, and we have to understand this much, much better. Otherwise, we will never be able to really do projects for the good of the people with the business situation that is already there.
Thank you.
Giusi.
Thank you, Olivier. Yes. Yes. No, sorry. I heard someone calling my name. Thomas, but I also seen that I was also looking at the chat and seeing that there were some comments exchange between people. So I don't know whether we have Thomas, I'm going to ask you for just for a minute of patience. We still have time and we don't have many questions. So if someone wants to comment, I know that Olivier and Tony, you were listening very carefully to Oliver. So if you want to share a comment on the last.
No, I think it's just a joke, and an insider joke for the one point of the thing. So people who know American US TV series, they might understand this joke very well, but who don't know that so deeply, so they might have a question, what is it? And that's the question I asked. And I asked another question to Olivier. And if I understood you correctly, you made the conscious decision to enter the career path of project management. And the reason was, as I understood you, to improve, to change the world. Is that correct?
Let me unmute. Kind of. So it started,
so
it started accidentally, but then I've seen that the smallest common denominator between all of the different things I have been able to do in my short career, the smallest common denominator has always been project management. And project management has always been what allowed me to get things done. And I say things, but there is another expression for that. When I worked in organizing concerts or theater plays or exhibitions, that was project management. And this practice of project management allowed me to make people happy from the music they were listening to, educate them from the plays they were coming to see. And then afterwards, I worked in media, business, doing websites, things like that, where most of them were actually educational at that time. So bringing some knowledge to people through project management, for the application actually of project management, getting things done. And then this is what shaped my my path all the way to where I am now. And I must say that it's humbling and very surprising to me every day when I wake up and I have to remember that, yes, I am the Chief Operations Officer of the PMI Educational Foundation. Like this is a wow thing every time I wake up.
It is.
So,
it is.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that. The reason why I asked this question is because I understood you made the conscious decision at one point of time to pursue that path. And the same happened to me. I was also an accidental project manager, and I was a systems engineer designing data centers for IBM customers. I was a software developer, all that, for some years. And then at one point, I thought about what I'm doing, and what I want to do the next 30 years. And I made the decision from one day to the other to pursue a career in project management. And the reason for that is quite different from your reason. You somehow grew into that, as I understood you correctly. My reason was that I understood that project management at the core is a people business, and it's about talking and working with your team and working with the client and doing all this. And I got a very good, I had at this time a big project. It was 1988. And after that project, 1.5 years, designing a data center move, whatever, the CEO of that company I did the project for came to me and said, you handled very well all this, well, he didn't call it such, but the stakeholder engagement, And I said, I thought about it. It's okay, it's not important how we did it and which kind of, if you had waterfall or how the plans are or all the tools and techniques. No, it was important, to set up a appropriate communication structure, to care about the people, to understand where they're coming from, to educate them, to train them, and to embed it all into one community, if you want so. Even if we are from different companies, as Oliver talked about, that we have to consider this. So that's how I became a project manager in 1988, and I pursued that path from then. So coming back to your question, Giusi.
Thomas, there is one thing that I really would like to ask you, because I know that we share a common interest in these aspects. There is an underlying question to all we are saying today. And the question is, what do humans generally perceive as good for the public? And do we have common values?
Yeah, and I'm doing like Tony is doing a lot of presentations, on the topic of the future of project management. I'm doing a lot of presentations to chapters, to everybody, and even Tony heard it once from me about the human values, and that we have human values. Actually, I was working in the ethics review committee for 6 years when I was not. Then I came on the board and I worked on the ethics topic further. And during these maybe 10 years of concern about ethics and in project management, but in humans, I came about a lot of literature and knowledge, and one thing struck and changed my let's say direction in that. There was a guy called Rushworth Kidder, and he passed away some 10, 12 years ago, but he dedicated his life to find out the common values of humans, of everybody. So he traveled the world and looked at all the tribes in Indonesia, somewhere in the Pacific, in the Americas, in Latin America, whatever. So he looked at that and said, I'll come up with a set of values that seem to be common among humans. And these values are, surprise, surprise, 8 values, and 4 of them, surprise, surprise, are the values you can find in the PMI Code of Ethics. And now I can ask anybody of you, and you have it in your head, it's about responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. These are the 4 values that are codified in our Code of Ethics. But then there are 4 others that were found by Rushworth Kidder, and he presses out, and I think you can, everybody can relate to these. So the other is that we are striving for freedom, for autonomy. We want to make our own decisions. We don't want to be put into a jail and not able to get up when we want, but we want to be free. And freedom is a value we all cherish for ourselves and for others. Another value we all cherish, and you can see it in the aftermath of the earthquake we see here. We want to care for other people. We want to help other people. That's a value we find positive, and we ourselves, we donate money, we donate our time, we go there and really care of other people. It's also sometimes described as love others, and because we are social animals, so we are trying to make this community we are living in better. And then, community itself, we cannot live without being part of a lot of communities. First thing is we have our mother and ourselves, and I cry and she feeds me. And then we have a family, we have siblings, we go to school, we have universities, professions, classes, whatever, sport clubs. So we are used to be a member of many, many communities. And the culture of these communities, how they behave and what they do, that forms who we are. So we are not individuals coming out of the blue. No. We are developing as individuals until we are 20, 25, and even beyond that, And to be honest, PMI formed me a lot, all this volunteerism I was able to give and be part of this formed me a lot, and made me really blossom, and that I was able to travel the world a lot. This gave me a lot of insights and changed myself. And then the 8 So besides freedom, community care, the eighth is the being humble, humility. So these are the four values that Rushworth Kidder found. And yes, so if you look at this, you can look at the books of Rushworth Kidder or look at one of my presentations, and I put it up in my LinkedIn profile. So I think that we have common values. And this thing of the values is, values are different from beliefs, So everybody I have a strong feeling for whatever, a value is something you can talk with another human, regardless where he or she is from, and you can agree that this is positive, or this behavior which violates one of these values is negative. Yeah, this is the agreement where you have a common value. But you can also talk about beliefs. So I believe in, let's say, God and Jesus, and then you can talk to somebody else who says, I don't care about Jesus, I have another God or another belief. So beliefs are somehow dividing us humans. We can have conflicts about beliefs, but we always come together if you look at the values. So, and if you look at these values, we had the other question, how to become an ethical person, and then how to be good, and how do we find out what good is. For me, I find it very valuable to think about these values, to know them by heart, and to act regarding them, and to judge my decisions making and my actions against these values.
Thank you, Thomas. We don't have any questions yet, and something came to my mind as I was listening to you, Thomas. Some of you might know this little story, and know who Margaret Mead is. She's one of the first anthropologists, and the story says that one of her students asked her what she thought was the first sign of civilization on Earth. What do you think she replied? If you don't know the story, if you know the story, just don't say anything. Does any of you have any thought on this? First sign of civilization on Earth.
I don't know the story, but I'll take a stab. I don't know, caring for one another, something like that.
Yes.
I think that's older. I think that's older than civilization, caring for another.
Irina has put the answer, which is on the line with what Tony Appleby says, a healed, broken hip. Because in nature, you cannot survive if you've broken your hip, and that meant someone had helped that person when the person was in pain and in difficulties. So there was a sense of community, and from the sense of community came civilization. So yes, that was what their supposed answer is a story that is related about her. And that came to mind, Thomas, as I was listening to you. The sense of community, of common value, of helping each other. There is another person, a modern person, a live person, Dave Snowden, that says that in an emergency, most of us will share all the knowledge we have, which is another way to look at the community. And I think is also an important aspect for project managers, where communication, as you all said before, is an important element of our profession. But we also know that there are some times where what we know, knowledge, is felt as a form of power, not to be shared. So the sense of community, the urgency, the desire to help each other do become as an important part of managing projects. That's from my point of view. There was someone else that was talking, I think.
I was going to say, Giusi, like just building on the interesting point you just mentioned, Today, I have another presentation about like behavior change, and we were discussing that our brain following two principles: the need to connect, so to belong, to be part of some sense of purpose, and also the need to be protecting our problems, is because those two principles clashes. Psychological safety is present, so we tend to close ourselves, and we tend to what is happening. Whereas if we feel that community, that sense of belonging, that sense of connection environment, we're also more enabled to change, more open, and we don't resist change. So we are wired to connect, help us in both senses. So thank you for your comment, because it's really inspiring.
I've seen that we have a question. Oh, okay. We have a question in the chat. Is if there are political issues in the world, the work done and not appear uncaring when addressing current issues? Anyone that cares to answer?
Important to minimize the politics in any kind of situation. So we had Ghana that had it, to make a long story short, it had and when the environment changed, then the politics changed, and so they were never able to solve this problem for the people. And what we were able to do was community, the sense of community, and that if I win, and then you win, and if you win, then really trying to minimize the politics, getting down to the actual fact, solving the problem, whatever the problem is for the project, and focusing on those key project management, most important thing, and really trying to avoid the engagement in any of the politics if it's possible.
I think I would partially disagree with Deanna here.
Oh.
Where you are. If you are in a US environment where politics is generally confronted, very competitive and aggressive, then I think you may be right, because you destroy the ability of because you find some cracks in the social system environment where you have different parties with some democracy competition for the votes, but nevertheless there is a culture where when the together, these coalitions are sometimes a bit fragile, sometimes they are quite stable, but there is a culture there. Inside election time, I think sometimes you have to be political, because it is part of the world. Want to engage stakeholders, or to at least to manage stakeholders, and if we in the world in which it is, then we cannot simply ignore an important element of this world. Answer here.
Agreed. And just to be clear, collaboration is the way to go if you can do that, definitely, Oliver.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Jump in for a second here.
Yes, sure, sure. We have time.
So I wanted to piggyback on Olivier's comment here. So I remember that he was using this term, and I may not translate it correctly in English, but he was saying you should be political, you shouldn't be party driven, right? So in that sense, or partisan, I'm not sure if that's the word. Or value set, you should know what you want to achieve, you should know what you get engaged into, and then of course collaborate with all the people around, so all the parties in that sense, to get to read the book The Righteous Mind, and I did not process this completely yet, but what I recall, and I think it worked quite well here, to some extent, right? And he was saying, I just checked this, right? Care, fairness, liberty, loyalty, authority, and sanctity, right? And now within those, people have different feeling of what is a little bit more important. So everything is important for everyone, right? But some of them focus a little bit more on this part, some a little bit more on that side. And with that, being able to provide the value that your project or your projects are providing to the community or to the people in the terms, in the naming convention that those people care about, right? With those moral elements will help to deliver the message, right? Regardless of how that, where that originates with, right? So two thoughts here.
Thanks so much, Nick. I will go back to Tony. Tony, and to the future of the profession, because that's something that we all wondering about in this time of changes. And we spoke about sustainability. We spoken of the need for projects to be sustainable. Do you think, or how do you think sustainability could be embedded into project management practices?
So thank you for that. And I was kind of prepared thinking you might go this way. So I had the very good fortune of being invited to the PMI Singapore chapter last November, where they hold an annual project management and sustainability conference. It's a multi-day thing, and it was just top notch. They did a masterful job of bringing together, world-class thinkers, world-class practitioners who are applying, sustainability and ESG stuff in the real world, in the real environments. And if you get a chance to go, I really recommend it if you're really into this, which I hope each and every one of you are. But the future, is kind of twofold. So PMI does a megatrends report. Hopefully most, if not everybody on the Zoom meeting here is familiar with it. I'll drop the link into the chat when I'm done. And two of the items in our most recent report are on climate change and demographic shifts. And those really, are important to capture, because climate change is driving how and where a lot of project work is happening. And the demographic shifts, are a reaction in large degree, to a number of different social factors, but one of which is the climate. So there's some intertwining that goes on there. So, as the climate changes are happening, waterfall, for example, different parts of the world are experiencing water stress. And so the populations, in those areas will tend over time to shift elsewhere, either to other established population centers or somewhere else regionally where the water, is more prevalent. But as they move into new areas or even into populated areas, There's a need for additional infrastructure, for bridges and schools and roads and hospitals and everything like that. Project managers are going to be needed to build those. So for those of you in the construction industry, your future is safe. Unfortunately, some of those projects are going to be battling against climate change, like helping ports, raise their infrastructure, as rising sea levels occur. There's a need to make that happen. But on the other side of the scale, is how do you be proactive, in working to limit or minimize or reduce or eliminate, the undue influences of climate change. And sustainability topics are challenged to a certain degree with how do we make it actionable. And I think I mentioned that in my earlier response. And if you can frame it in such a way that people, whether they're your project team members, or your extended stakeholder community, or whatever leadership level you're talking with, in terms that they can get their head and their heart wrapped around, you'll be much more successful. So it means, obviously we're going to need to inform ourselves more. Hence why I imagine most of the people viewing this are here today. But it's, I like the net zero carbon plan in a way, because it's something it's easier to frame for people. We've got this very concrete, discrete problem. How can we tackle it? What are things that can move the needle on the dial in the correct direction? And it's things like helping our organization or our community or our country or our region, massively improve the insulation of houses, electrify the transport system, help move the food system away from meat, make fashion, the fashion business more sustainable, change the technologies, that we use for the production of cement and steel and fertilizers. How do we create mechanisms that collect carbon dioxide directly from the air? Things along those lines. Now, those are big tasks. And as I was getting ready for that conference in Singapore, excuse me, got a lot of pollen going on. It's springtime here, so my apologies. As I was getting ready for that conference, and I brought it up, so I'm going to share my screen ever so briefly because I think this is worth taking a look at. Is this the right side share? Yeah, there we go. So Singapore had to, I was blown away. They've got a ministry, a deputy minister who works to address climate change specifically within their country, and they've created actionable mechanisms that cross the gamut. So it's things like green hydrogen, are going to constitute 50% of the country's energy mix. They're going to increase their investment in R&D and hydrogen technologies and the infrastructure to support the deployment of those technologies. And the government's going to work closely, with carbon intensive sectors on how to help them decarbonize, and it's very exciting. But what they did, was they encompassed, that everyone can play a part. I don't know if you can see it on the bottom of the screen here. So the public sector takes the leadership. So those of you that are project managers in the public sector, you may very well be encountering opportunities where you can lend a hand in helping to craft, strategies and execute on those strategies, to help partner with the private sector. And the private sector, has opportunities just as Olivier was talking about earlier, in building mechanisms that increase, a brand perception that allows for the corporate allowance to charge a little bit more for the investments that they're making on the benefit of the larger community. And then the Singapore government is put into place, there's a whole bunch of different slides and I'm not going to belabor it, but how the individual can also be engaged. So there's a lot to unpack there, I know, but I think it's very powerful, and the future actually isn't as stark as it might be, because we've got bold people who are leading and making little differences and big differences, and we're part of that community. We need to keep that front of mind. And I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Tony. And
Giusi,
how to make it,
if I may
yes,
just
yes,
jump in
sure,
quickly on that thing. I hear very often the question, what sustainability has to do with project management. And to piggyback on what Tony was saying, I think it's the wrong question. It's not what sustainability has to do with project management. It's what project management has to do with sustainability. Sustainability is what we have to keep in mind and keep delivering every single day in everything we can do. And project management is actually a mean to achieve that in the most efficient and effective way we can. So let's not reverse the paradigm. It's not sustainability serving project management. It's project management being the delivery tools, the delivery mean for sustainability.
Totally agree with you, Olivier. And I'm taking one thing that Tony said, you know, how to make that actionable, in a comment in the chat from Elaine saying, people need to pull their head out of the sand and take action to level they're able to. And I'm going to tap again to your experience and your competences, Lucila, to ask you why change is so difficult, because that's what it's all about, even making small changes in our daily habits, and of course, bigger changes in our projects and bigger changes at community level and so on and so forth. But why change is so difficult? And how can we make it safe?
Thank you so much. I want to reinforce the point that Olivier has made. I think this is a great invitation to rethink the way we do projects and applying these concepts to start making change happen from an individual perspective, from a project management perspective, and ultimately from a society perspective. And as probably you recall this quote from Heraclitus, that there is nothing more permanent except change. So the only thing that wouldn't change is change, in fact. So we're in a kind of area where the usual thing, it's not business as usual, it's transformation as usual. But even though we know that we need to change is super difficult at a society level, at an organizational level, because ultimately it's difficult from a personal level. And Olivier was referencing this television thing about Pinky and the brain. So I'm going to be speaking about the brain, because ultimately change is difficult because of our brain and how our brain is wired. So emotionally and cognitive, our brain have established different paths because the neurons that wire together. So our initial experiences in life make us think in certain ways. And then it's super difficult because it's an automatical path of thinking in our brain. And in order to undo that path, that is possible, and it's called, in fact, neuroplasticity, and we all have the ability to reshape the way we think and how our brain is wired, but it's difficult and it's challenging because we have been used to develop certain root cause of thinking, certain path. So we need to rewire our brain in order to be able to change. So from a human perspective, we are not able to change and do big changes at a one, because we need to repeat consistently and to build a different routine. So changing, it's about unlearning. And that's the difficult thing, because we need to unlearn and to do things in a different way. And we only achieve those changes with small milestones. So if we want to promote change in a personal level and in an organizational level, a lot about is repetition, building a routine. And that's one of the main reasons why our end of year or start of the year resolution fail. It's because we want to do big things at once, and then we don't have that consistency throughout the year. So when we want to change things, it's better to put small milestones and to repeat and consistently communicate. So for example, from a project perspective or from an organizational perspective, it's all about repeating that communications, making that routine, making people aware and engaged in what we are changing and what we are trying to achieve in order to build that routine. And the second component that one of my colleagues, I think Tony was speaking about, that it's the target, the measurement element. The only thing that drives change is what we measure. So if we don't measure something, we wouldn't be able to change it. So we need to put targets and be able to track progress And the third component, so I mentioned routine, the repetition, engaging like constantly throughout the path to change. The second one that I was saying is targeting, measurement, like tracking how you're progressing. And the third component is the reward or celebration. And sometimes we're much more to achieve things, but we don't give us time and space to celebrate what we have achieved at a project perspective, at an organizational perspective, and also at an individual perspective, because we are really self-demanding. So we don't have that mental space to detach and to celebrate, because that reward element is what keeps us sustaining change. And it's from a hormonal perspective, because when we have, for example, in social media, that like our brain liberates certain hormones that promotes that behavior. So we need to introduce elements of reward, of recognition, if we want change to be sustainable. And I think I mentioned in the previous question that element of being human being versus human doing. We need to introduce more time to pause and reflect and acknowledge and celebrate in order to promote sustainable behavior change. Sometimes it's like we said, like we are part of business, but being part of business is not about being busyness, the element of being busy. Sometimes it's better to like allocate some thinking time, some reflective time into our agenda in order to pause, acknowledge, celebrate, give feedback, ask for feedback, because ultimately those are the components that help us change to be sustainable from an individual perspective. And then if we change as humans, we drive that change into our projects, into our organizations, and into society.
Thank you so much, Lucila. Przemek, as a transformation expert, would you like to add something to Lucila's insight?
Well, she covered it very well. So what I'm thinking here is the element of focus on how we as the leaders act, or how we develop new leaders that are able to help our teams and themselves in driving the change, in driving the transition. And what I'm thinking is that we constantly do not see enough of the transition and change management base and preparation for the teams, or explanation of this, how those things work, to the young leaders, right? I'm talking about the first-time team managers, team leaders, and so on. Now, obviously, a number of them just know how to do it, but that could be it could have more impact on it. And now I'm thinking from the change management and sustainability there, connected to our leadership. So we know this model of you learn 10% from what you read or learn on the trainings, right? And then 20% from the other people, and then 70% on the job, right? So actually building this base and then having opportunity to practice it, to show how that works, to get involved into driving the change, running the change, but also, and change by that I mean the transformation of the organization, but also transition and moving people through the change in the organization, and giving opportunity to work on that, experience that, and deliver this transformation and transition would be something that is, I think, still very much needed for the leadership team.
Thank you so much.
And project management is actually giving different levels of response based on the different levels of transformation. So based on the complexity of the transformation you have to embed within the organization, you will respond with a different level of application of project management, from a very simple adjustment activity to what we can call radical programs, or programs of programs, which embrace more global and in-depth transformations of the organization, either cultural or strategic. So yeah, that's an interesting topic, but I think Przemek and we can spend hours talking about it.
And I'm going to take what Przemek and Olivier said, Deanna, to ask you something again on your specific field with NGOs. how can no-profit organization adopt project management at whatever level is needed? You know, we take it from Olivier, without project manager, at least without that specific role, without saying, oh, we have a project manager.
That's a really good question. I think everyone in the organization is a potential project manager, whether we use that title or not, or they at least have the potential to utilize project management skills. When you could look at it as maybe the politics of the company or the ideas of or the strategies of a particular group. You can frame the situation such that they're not seen as a particular way. So for instance, we worked with a refugee organization, and the organization said, we can't afford project managers. We don't want project management. We have this small budget, and you need to organize this or you need to do that. And what we ended up doing was framing things differently and helping a particular person develop project management skills who was responsible for operations. Now, sometimes you think of operations over here and projects over here, but project management skills really can inform and improve operations as well. And so with this particular person, what we ended up doing was she was asking for, in the beginning, she asked for project management skills. She knew nothing. She wanted project management skills. So we helped work with her in that space. Then she had enough of that. And she said, maybe I want to get my PMP. And we realized, or she realized with our help, she had all sorts of project management experience, but wasn't calling it project management, which we see all the time. And so then after that, she actually got her PMP. And after that, she ended up asking if we had any PMs that could help her in the NGO space specifically. And so we kept iterating through different people with different skills to give her more skills, give her more knowledge in project management without her framing it as project management. We had training on kickoffs. How do you do that for an endeavor? We can call it an endeavor or an initiative instead of a project. Even providing mentorship, that sort of thing. And so in the end, we referred back to communications management success, and she was able to fit the project management term into her work and attribute her success to it. Going back to a phrase from a long time ago from PMI, but she was able to do that because of the framing that we used. So the real key is that you don't need to be a project manager or have that as a title to improve an organization, to use project management skills. And once they see the efficiency and other benefits of project management practices, then they're more likely to adopt them through their organizations and maybe even dedicate a role to improving their way of working through project management.
Thank you so much. Olivier, I'm going to bring PMIF back into it, of course, after what Deanna said. With youth and kids, where certain words would not make sense, any best practices in rephrasing, in making project management available to where project management is like another world?
Keep things simple. I mean, act with kids like you would be acting with executives. I mean, when talking to C-levels, in my former life of project management consultant and an organizational consultant, beyond the director's level, I never use the words project and management, at least never together, because they have a perception that it's operational, so boring. And kids are exactly the same. So if you start to think about methods, processes, tools, systems, forget about it. So the practical approach of demonstrating what you can do and how you can do with it is something which is amazing. One thing which we're doing with PMIF is working with one of our partners, Formula One in schools. That's amazing what they're doing. I mean, so of course, very related to the Formula One organization. And they run competitions between teenagers who have to build a racing car, and then those racing cars have to compete. And you have to win the race, of course. But before getting to the race and eventually winning the race, you have to build an entire project of how you will construct that car. And it's something which is made concrete and tangible. Concrete and tangible and simple language. So 9 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, earned value management, forget all of that. That doesn't speak to children more than it speaks to executives. But tangible, concrete, measurable outcomes, and if possible, make it fun. I mean, very often we take ourselves too seriously. And if you take yourself too seriously, then it becomes serious, then it becomes boring, and then it becomes less effective and engaging.
Thank you so much, Olivier. I'm going to move, for the sake of time, I'm going to move to Olivier and bring it back to the world, you know, the companies, the organizational world, and ask you if you have an example of cross-corporate project that contributed to public good.
My favorite example is something I said already. This is the case of Pfizer and of BioNTech, the German company BioNTech, as their contractor. I think they contributed a lot to the public good because they just saved a lot of lives all around the world and did a lot of good for the world. At the same time, they of course made a lot of money with that, and especially BioNTech, which was the smaller company, they got very, very rich on that. But I think they somehow deserved it all. But let me give this as another example to my response to Deanna, when Deanna said we should be careful with politics. How can questions such as climate change, such as vaccinations, how can they become political? I'm afraid when we say we cannot touch these things, they are political, then we can no more touch the really important thing, because as soon as someone makes such a thing political, then it is somehow taboo for us, and this shouldn't happen. And it's not a question of politics. It's a question of common sense, of course, and it's a question of saving human lives. Why project business management can bring a lot of good is because organizations put together their assets. Some have great people, some have just money, maybe, some have other assets. They put this together and make something new out of that. This is the positive aspect, that you tap into the assets of another organization and turn it into a resource for the project. So this is where we can achieve something together, but we need to learn something. As project managers, we need to learn how to make sure that project business is working, that these projects do not get destroyed by clashing interests, by clashing egos, by intercultural conflicts, and so many other things that we have. Legal troubles, how many projects, cross-corporate projects, end at court. This is, of course, not something that contributes to the good of people and to the good of society. This is everyone fighting for himself or herself. This is not something that contributes to the good for all of us. So, yep.
If I might add, from my background, which is linguistics, politics comes from polis, which is the ancient Greek word for city. Politics were things about the city, so
Yes.
things about the community.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I believe in modern times we have lost, this is my own personal opinion, we have lost trust in politics, and the terms has become somehow negative, at least in English, but at least I can say in Italian as well, has become a sense of something which is far away and has almost ruled by itself, but it wasn't what the words actually originally meant. Just to move on,
But the
because there is one
classical,
last.
sorry to disrupt you, the classical
Yes.
polis also had the same struggles between parties, fighting with
Oh,
each
yes.
other, yeah, sometimes even killing each other, which, as far as I see, we don't have at the moment.
Yeah, yes, we moved a little bit from that point, at least not always, I'm afraid, but
Yeah,
most of the time, I would say.
yeah.
I'll move on to Thomas, because there is one last question I would like to ask all of you. Thomas, again, I go back to you, and I go back to the individual. How can we become better person, leader, project manager, and thus contribute to public goods, even to politics?
Well, I already shared an article where you can read about it, but
Yeah.
let me close this question with a real story. As I share, I'm mentoring about 15 people in parallel, some of them in the project management space, but also some refugees in Germany. And I started mentoring a refugee, a young Syrian person who came here to Germany in 2015, and so he got some education, training, German language, and everything. And well, one particular thing I during the mentorship, what I recommended him and he took up is, why don't you volunteer for your local fire department? And you might not know the context in Germany. We have about 1 million firefighters, which are volunteers. 95% of German firefighters are volunteers. And so maybe 5% are paid firefighters. So a lot of these volunteers, come together in their local village, in their city, and they are doing the real work. In my village, they have about 200 incidents every year. No, it might be just a cat on a tree, but there are also fires and people dying and accidents and everything. And I managed to get him into the local fire department, consisting of 20 people. And he's Syrian, his German is not so good, and people were looking at, he's a stranger, can he really be an asset? And yes, he's now in the fire department for 3 years, and he did all the education. And what he learned is project management. Because if you have a fire department and you're called at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you rush to the fire department, get on the clothing and get in the car, and the target is to be at the incident place in 8 minutes. From alert to in 8 minutes. So this is, first, you are part of a team. You have to trust each other, and you have to work together to make things happen. The outcome is you might save lives, and you're really doing a good to the real community. You can observe it. That's good what you're doing. And the third thing is, you cannot be on that team without training. And this training includes all the tools and techniques you need as a firefighter, And one concern when he started there was, does he understand our German orders? When the leader of the fire squad tells us, get the water, whatever, it's just one short order, and you have to understand what this word means. And maybe a Syrian guy, not very comfortable with German, has a problem with that, but he hasn't, And for him, it's a benefit too, besides that he is obliged to go there every month on a Saturday, whatever, to train and to be part of the thing. He's also getting the reward because he's part of a new family, and this family enabled him to get a new flat, because he has now a wife, he will get a kid soon, and he was looking to move out of his flat, 1 room, 20 square meters, and now he has a 3-room flat. And this was organized through the connection of the fire brigade from this particular thing. So this is a very good story where you do good and project management helps you to good, and where you really receive the benefits out of it. You are part of community, and this ethical behavior on all sides.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And we are drawing towards the end. And as I said, there is one last question that I really would like to ask all of you. I trust you're familiar with the new PMI values and with the mantras, be the ripple. And my question to all of you is, what does it mean for you, be the ripple? Tony, I'll ask you to start.
I adore that the 7th edition does have principle-based approaches, and that it does put sustainability out there. That made me very, very happy when I saw that in the draft edition. I'm afraid I'm going to have to actually jump a minute or two early because I've been told I have to. I pay attention to what I'm being told. But I did want to say this has been one of the most substantive and enjoyable panels that I think I've ever been on. And I really want to thank each and every one of you for the sharings that you have, and my most sincere apologies. I'm really being asked to leave, so I'm going to miss saying goodbye to each of you.
Thanks to you, Tony.
Yeah, and I hope everyone online, has gotten some value.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you
Oliver,
so much.
real quick, you've got a great background. Not Olivier, Oliver. But I'm worried that if you push back, you're going to fall down some stairs. All right, thanks everyone.
Bye-bye. Lucila, I be the ripple.
Yeah.
That it's
Yes.
very important
Well,
for you. What it means
I love
for
that
you.
you introduced the question, Giusi, because we are in the journey of really living and embedding values in everything that we do. As you know, for me, my preferred values are together we can and aim higher, because it's that power of community and sense of belonging that we were speaking before. I think being the ripple for me means a lot being courageous, and it can be like the two of them at the same time. So sometimes in order to grow, and being courageous, it's being the ripple because it's doing and it's addressing things that matter. So I think living our values, it's being and to connect with others to bring that change that we want to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think for me, that's, of course, that's walking the talk, right? But that goes with self-reflection. And I was thinking in the sense of how the ripple gets made. It's because of the drop that falls. Fall into the water, there will be no ripples, right? So how do you look at the environment? How do you look at your surrounding, about the people? How do you help them grow so that in this metaphorical sense, they become your lake, that you can actually have the impact and the ripple? So that the ripples might go. That's my thought here.
So much, Przemek. Deanna.
Yeah, I think it's about taking action for. So above the water, so that your action is seen to make the impact even greater.
Thank you so much. Olivier.
We meet about 20,000 people in a lifetime. If you have a positive impact, if you change positively the life of only 2% of those 20,000 people, will also have an impact on another 400 people, and each of those 400 people, and so on. So it's the entire population of the world. So there is no change which is too small. There is no impact which is too small. Start wherever. Movies and TV references, as one of my inspirational figures says, do it or do not. There is no try.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Olivier.
7th edition, and there's a word that I like very much, which we should stewardship. Be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. So if we are stewards for the people generations, we cannot make anything wrong anymore. Cannot do it.
Thanks so much, Thomas.
Well, yes, I understood the question is also about, the recently published values of the community of PMI. And I was surprised to see it, but I also understood, and it's very clear stated that these should help to build the community within PMI. So they should help to give us a hint how to behave, and everybody of the community, so the volunteers and staff members. So this is an improvement, because before, maybe volunteers and staff members were different groups of people, and now we come together a little bit closer, and that has a good effect on PMI. I must say, though, I'm a little bit skeptical, and the skeptic comes also from some discussion forums where PMI members discuss these new values, and they are a little bit surprised and not so content with it. So I think it may need some explanation why we came there, and might need some more examples. For example, one thing that was criticized was that the new 5 values don't include the value of about volunteerism, so that volunteering is a core thing that we should also look for. And we are all here as volunteers, and I think still volunteerism is the lifeblood of PMI, and PMI would say so, but the values have been reduced by this value of volunteerism. So that's one of the questions that came up, and maybe there is an explanation for that, but it's not shared yet, and maybe that's a good thing to share it.
Yeah. Thomas, it is actually whatever we can is the value.
I'm going to steal 1 minute, Thomas, because I think the volunteerism is truly embedded into the new values, to the point where we spoken of we are PMI. So there is no longer even a division, not longer a need to state volunteerism. If you and personally I'm very excited about them, so I'm partial to them. I understand there is a change is difficult. We just said it with Lucila, but if you read through them carefully, you can see that we move even a step beyond volunteerism. We're moving into the true sense of being a community. This at least is my opinion and my interpretation of the new values. And I couldn't resist to add this comment. But I've stolen 2 minutes. I want to thank all of you for the insight. It's been an honor to be with you and to listen to your insight. I'll leave my place to the next moderator. And thank you again to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good to chat with old friends.
Yes, a good chat with old friends. You're right.